March 6, 1943. Major General George S. Patton, Jr. walked into the headquarters of the U.S. Second Corps in North Africa. The building was quiet. Officers moved through hallways with the shuffling uncertainty of men who knew they had failed. The atmosphere felt heavy with defeat. Then Patton arrived. He was wearing a polished helmet, ivory-handled revolvers, and an expression that made every officer in the building nervous. By the end of his first day, multiple officers were relieved of command. By the end of his first week, the number would reach dozens. By the end of 10 days, Second Corps would be unrecognizable. Patton had been sent to fix a disaster. American forces had just suffered the worst defeat U.S. ground forces had experienced in North Africa. The bloodiest week American troops had seen in the war, an entire division routed. Images of American surrender broadcast worldwide. Eisenhower had given Patton one mission: restore order, restore discipline, restore the fighting spirit of an army that had been shattered at a place called Kasserine Pass. What followed was one of the most ruthless leadership purges the Army had seen. Patton would fire officers for cowardice, for incompetence, for being in the wrong place, for not wearing their helmets properly. He would transform a defeated, demoralized corps into an effective fighting force in 10 days, and he would do it by making every officer terrified of being the next one sent home in disgrace. This is the story of how Patton saved the American Army in North Africa by destroying the careers of dozens of officers who had failed to fight. Not because they weren't brave, but because they weren't ready. February 14, 1943. German forces under Field Marshal Erwin Rommel launched Operation Frühlingswind, attacking American positions at Sidi Bou Zaid in Tunisia. American forces had been in North Africa for only 3 months. Most American soldiers had never been in combat. Their officers had never commanded troops under fire. They were facing battle-hardened Wehrmacht veterans who had been fighting in the desert for 2 years. By February 15th, the situation was catastrophic. Young soldiers from Kansas and Ohio who had been told they were the best in the world were now discarding rifles just to run faster. The German offensive continued. On February 19th, Rommel sent his Panzer Division straight through Kasserine Pass. Within hours, the defense collapsed completely. Major General Lloyd Fredendall commanded Second Corps from headquarters 70 miles behind the front lines. When the German attack began, Fredendall couldn't coordinate a response. He didn't know where his own units were. He blamed his subordinates for failures that stemmed from his own poor planning. By February 24th, when the battle ended, American forces had suffered over 6,000 casualties. The 168th Infantry Regiment lost 2,000 men. The 1st Armored Division lost 183 tanks. Hundreds of Americans were captured and paraded before German cameras for propaganda purposes. British commanders questioned whether American troops could fight effectively. German commanders concluded that Americans were poorly led and easily defeated. Something had to change immediately. Eisenhower knew exactly who to send. George S. Patton, Jr. was 57 years old in March 1943. He had commanded tanks in World War I and had written doctrine manuals for armored warfare between the wars. He was known throughout the Army as a brilliant trainer of troops and a fierce disciplinarian. He demanded perfection. He accepted no excuses. He believed that discipline under pressure separated winning armies from losing ones. Patton believed that American soldiers were not inferior to German soldiers. They were simply poorly led and poorly trained. Given proper leadership and aggressive tactics, Americans would win every time. Eisenhower had worked with Patton for decades. He knew Patton could train troops brilliantly and restore confidence. But Patton was also ruthless with officers he considered incompetent. He would fire commanders without hesitation. That ruthlessness was exactly what Second Corps needed. On March 6, 1943, Eisenhower relieved Fredendall and appointed Patton as the new commander of Second Corps. Patton's orders were simple. Fix this. Make them fight. Do it fast. Patton's first directive was issued within hours of his arrival. Every soldier in Second Corps would wear their helmet and full combat gear at all times. No exceptions. The first officer he fired was sitting at a desk without a helmet. He didn't even have time to stand. Patton told him to pack his belongings and report to the rear immediately. 20 years of service ended in one sentence. Officers who appeared without helmets were relieved on the spot. Within 24 hours, every person at Second Corps headquarters looked like they were ready for combat inspection. Patton's second directive concerned saluting. Every soldier would salute every officer. Military courtesy would be enforced rigidly. That night, Patton met with his senior commanders. American soldiers hadn't failed at Kasserine. American leadership had failed them. March 7, 1943. Patton drove to the forward positions of Second Corps. He wanted to see for himself what the tactical situation looked like and how officers were performing. At the 1st Battalion headquarters he visited, the commanding officer wasn't present. He was back at the division command post. His executive officer didn't know exactly where all the battalion's companies were positioned. Patton relieved the battalion commander immediately. He appointed the executive officer as acting commander and told him if he didn't know his positions by tomorrow, he'd be gone too. At the next position, Patton found a company commander who had established his command post 500 yards behind his forward platoons. The officer explained he needed to be positioned where he could coordinate communications. Patton told him a company commander belongs with his lead elements, not behind them. If you can't see what your troops are seeing, you can't lead them effectively. The officer was relieved and sent to the rear. Over the next 3 days, Patton visited dozens of positions. He fired officers who weren't at the front. He fired officers whose defensive positions were poorly organized. He fired officers who couldn't answer questions about their tactical situation. Patton also began evaluating his division and regimental commanders. He would watch them closely during the upcoming operations. Those who performed well would be promoted. Those who failed would be relieved. Major General Orlando Ward of the 1st Armored Division was among those under scrutiny. The message spread through Second Corps instantly. Get to the front. Know your positions. Be ready to answer the general's questions, or you're done. Every time a jeep engine sounded in the distance, officers tensed. They knew Patton was coming. They knew there would be no second chances. You were either a leader or you were heading home. The effect on morale was complex. Some officers were terrified. Others were energized. Soldiers in the ranks saw that leadership was being held accountable for the Kasserine disaster. The Army was learning a harsh lesson. Defeat had consequences. Poor leadership had consequences. And Patton was making sure everyone understood those consequences personally. Patton didn't just fire officers. He implemented immediate tactical training to fix the problems that had caused the Kasserine defeat. American tank tactics had been defensive. Patton changed this. Tanks would be used for aggressive maneuver and rapid exploitation. Artillery coordination had been chaotic at Kasserine. Patton demanded that fire missions would be delivered within minutes, not hours. Infantry-tank coordination was practiced daily. American infantry had panicked when German tanks appeared at Kasserine because they didn't know how to fight with their own armor units. Patton emphasized speed and aggression. American forces would not sit in defensive positions waiting to be attacked. They would attack first, attack hard, and keep attacking. That opportunity came faster than anyone expected. Eisenhower approved Patton's request to launch an offensive operation toward the town of El Guetar. The attack was scheduled for March 17, 1943. That gave Patton exactly 11 days from taking command to launching an offensive. Not every officer was fired. Patton identified subordinates who understood combat leadership and promoted them to larger responsibilities. Major General Omar Bradley had been sent to North Africa by Eisenhower as a special observer during the Kasserine battle. Bradley's job was to assess the situation and report back on command performance. His observations had been clear-eyed and accurate. Eisenhower trusted Bradley's judgment completely. After Kasserine, Bradley had recommended Patton as the right man to fix Second Corps. Now Patton was making Bradley his deputy commander. Bradley would handle much of the staff coordination, while Patton focused on tactics and leadership. It was an effective partnership that would continue through the rest of the war. Several battalion and regimental commanders who had fought well during the broader Kasserine period were identified for key positions. Officers who had maintained discipline under pressure. Leaders who had kept their troops fighting even when the situation was desperate. These officers became Patton's cadre. He placed them in key positions throughout Second Corps. They understood what he expected. They could train other officers in aggressive tactics. They had already proven themselves in combat. Patton's personnel decisions were brutal but not arbitrary. He wasn't firing officers randomly. He was removing officers who couldn't perform and promoting officers who could. The junior officer and NCOs of Second Corps noticed this pattern immediately. Competence was rewarded. Failure was punished. If you fought well and led effectively, Patton would promote you. If you failed to lead or showed cowardice, you were gone. This created exactly the culture Patton wanted. Officers competed to prove themselves. Nobody wanted to be the next one relieved. Everyone wanted to be recognized as one of the aggressive leaders Patton valued. By March 15th, Patton had begun reshaping Second Corps' command structure. Corps headquarters staff had been replaced. Battalion and regimental commanders were being evaluated. But changing personnel was only half the battle. Patton still had to change how these men thought about themselves. The most important change Patton created wasn't tactical. It was psychological. American soldiers stopped thinking of themselves as defeated and started thinking of themselves as dangerous. Patton's command style was deliberately theatrical. He gave profane speeches. He projected absolute confidence that American forces were superior to any enemy. Soldiers who had been depressed and uncertain after Kasserine responded to this energy. Patton didn't make excuses for the defeat. He didn't coddle them. He told them they were going to win, and he expected them to prove it. The nightly patrols and aggressive posture created momentum. American forces stopped reacting to German actions and started initiating contact. Small victories in patrol actions built confidence. German forces noticed the change. Intelligence reports from March 1943 describe American forces as more aggressive and better coordinated than in February. German commanders were surprised by how quickly the Americans had improved. This was exactly what Patton had intended. He wasn't just rebuilding Second Corps tactically. He was rebuilding it psychologically. American soldiers needed to believe they could beat the Germans who had routed them. The harsh discipline and constant inspections served this purpose. Soldiers who looked sharp felt sharp. Units that moved with precision felt professional. The external signs of military competence created internal confidence. British observers were skeptical. They thought Patton's emphasis on appearance and regulation was superficial showmanship. They were about to find out. March 17, 1943, 5:30 a.m. American artillery opened fire on German positions near El Guetar. The barrage lasted 30 minutes. Then American infantry and armor attacked. The 1st Infantry Division led the assault. These were the same troops who had been humiliated at Kasserine. Now they were attacking with the tactics Patton had drilled into them. By noon, American forces had advanced 6 miles and captured El Guetar. The first objective achieved ahead of schedule. On March 23rd, German forces counterattacked. This was the test. Would 2nd Corps break like at Kasserine, or would it hold? German panzer forces attacked head-on. American artillery destroyed the first wave of tanks. American anti-tank guns engaged at close range. American infantry held their positions instead of retreating. The German attack was stopped cold. Over 30 German tanks were destroyed. The counterattack had failed completely. American forces had proven they could fight defensive battles against German armor. The psychological wounds of Kasserine were beginning to heal. By April 7th, American forces had advanced over 50 miles. They had proven that American soldiers could fight effectively against the Wehrmacht. El Guetar wasn't the largest battle of the North African campaign, but it was the most important for American forces. It validated Patton's brutal leadership methods. Dozens of officers had their careers destroyed by Patton's Purge. Most were Corps headquarters staff officers and battalion-level field commanders, a few regimental commanders. Some were sent back to the United States and assigned to training commands or staff positions. Their combat leadership careers were over. Some of these officers were legitimately incompetent. They had failed under pressure. They had made poor decisions. They deserved to be removed from combat command. But others were competent administrators who simply weren't suited for frontline combat leadership. Patton didn't distinguish. Combat command required aggressive leadership. Anyone who couldn't provide it was removed. The personal cost was devastating. Many were decent, patriotic Americans who had given everything to the service. They packed their belongings in the middle of the night and headed home to face a lifetime of what-if questions. The Army handled these reliefs quietly. No formal charges were filed. Officers were simply reassigned with vague explanations. This protected the institution while removing inadequate leaders. It was cold and efficient. It was also brutal for the officers involved. The officers who survived understood the lesson. Leadership under fire was unforgiving. Mistakes had consequences. Performance mattered more than intentions. This culture persisted throughout the war. American forces developed a reputation for relieving commanders quickly when they failed to perform. Even senior officers like Orlando Ward, relieved April 5th, learned that rank didn't protect you. Whether this approach was fair to individual officers is debatable. Whether it created a more effective army is not. Patton commanded 2nd Corps for only 40 days. On April 15, 1943, he was reassigned to command 1st Armored Corps in preparation for the invasion of Sicily. Omar Bradley was promoted to command 2nd Corps. He maintained Patton's standards for discipline and aggressive tactics. The culture Patton created persisted. 2nd Corps would go on to fight successfully in Tunisia, Sicily, and Italy. The divisions that had been routed at Kasserine became veteran units with excellent combat records. Patton himself would command the 7th Army in Sicily and later the 3rd Army in France. He would become the most celebrated American ground commander of World War II. But the North African Purge remained controversial. Some officers admired Patton's ruthless accountability. Others believed he had destroyed careers unnecessarily. By May 1943, the North African campaign was over. American forces had proven they could fight effectively against the Wehrmacht. The officers Patton had promoted went on to distinguished careers. The officers he relieved disappeared from military history. The soldiers of 2nd Corps, who had been defeated at Kasserine, went on to storm beaches in Sicily and Italy. They became veteran units with excellent combat records. Patton's Purge taught the American Army lessons that shaped military doctrine for decades. Leadership accountability became core principle. The Army developed systems for rapid relief of commanders who failed to perform. The British operated differently. Failed commanders were reassigned rather than removed. The American approach created a more adaptable army. Patton himself would eventually be removed from command in 1945 for his outspoken political statements. The system he helped create was eventually used against him. The statistics tell the story clearly. At Kasserine Pass, 2nd Corps was routed. At El Guitar, 2nd Corps defeated German counterattacks. The difference was leadership. Patton saved the Army by breaking its heart. He sacrificed the careers of the few to save the lives of the many. And when 2nd Corps attacked at El Guitar, those soldiers were fighting because he had finally made them believe they were worth fighting for.